Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this event hosted by the Work on Climate community. We are a nonprofit and are home to the world's largest climate community. And one of our main objectives is to create educational content to help demystify climate work and make it more accessible for job seekers and founders. You can join us at workonclimate.org. My name is Yishan, and I'm a new member to the events team for Work on Climate. I will be facilitating this event with my co-host, Utkarsh, who leads the events team. Today, we are super excited to spotlight Carbon13 as part of our Climate Investor Series. It is our pleasure to host Dr. Chris Coleridge, Joseph, Laura, and Zoe from Carbon13 today. First, I'll share a very brief intro for each of our panelists. So firstly, we have Dr. Chris Coleridge, who is a senior faculty in management practice at Cambridge Judge Business School. For 14 years, he has been teaching and carrying out advisory work in entrepreneurship and strategy. Next, we have Laura, who is a PhD student at the University of Cambridge, focused on pharmacology, and is looking into bioreactor production of foods through precision fermentation processes at scale. Next, we have Joseph, who is a software engineer specializing in web and mobile applications. He loves problem solving, team building, mentoring, and bringing software from ideation to production. And last but not least, we have Zoe, who is developing a biotech venture to enable precision fermentation to scale from lab to production. Prior to this, she has spent 10 years building new products and services for Fortune 500 companies and startups in a wide range of industries, including healthcare, tech, finance, consumer, as well as the energy sectors. So a very warm welcome to all of our panelists. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. I'll first pass the stage over to Dr. Coleridge to share more about the Carbon13 program.
I think Chris is having some trouble with his audio. Let me see if I can fix that. Chris, can you try now? Yishan, how about we move to the some of the panel questions first, and I'll debug with Chris.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So I have a few questions for Laura, Joseph, and Zoe. So firstly, would you be able to share with us what prompted you to start your own venture rather than joining a pre-existing climate startup? Maybe we can start with Zoe, Joseph, and then Laura.
Sure. I guess for me, I think I hadn't actually thought about joining someone else's climate startup, to be completely honest. So I guess my background's a little bit unusual. So I actually started off my career in the charity sector, where I worked for 3 years from answering the phone to actually like leading global projects. And then I kind of went to master's, but also through my experience really felt like this needs systemic change. And in our society, you know, because we live in a capitalist system, that's how businesses work that, you know, underlie all our everyday experiences. So that's kind of how I ended up working in the corporate sector for so long, to understand actually how are decisions made and what are the decisions that, and like how they implemented that make the world run the way it is. And during this time, I've also worked with 6 different startups at different spaces. I co-founded my first startup actually during COVID, after winning an MIT COVID challenge. And there are 7 of us. And so I guess that was my first taste. And then last year I actually started my own startup that's a wholesale marketplace for sustainable consumer products, to basically create a decentralized supply chain for these products and help mainstream sustainable consumer goods. But and so I guess like for me, and then obviously then I joined Carbon13, and now I'm creating the biotech that I'm creating now, because for me this has even more impact than what I was building. So it's not that what I was building, like Sorcery, the wholesale marketplace, it's not that it didn't work. We saw traction. I'm still kind of basically I'm finding a new home for it so someone can really carry on that baton. But like for me, it's all about scale, and it's always been about social impact. And I guess because my background, even when I was in consulting and corporates, it's always been about starting new ventures, starting new products, starting new services. So in a way, it's hard for me to kind of go into a startup if I'm not the one starting it, because unless it's a kind of starting a new department or like entering a new space, like I don't see myself being like I don't know, like head of marketing or something like that, because that's not really my skill set.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing. And it does sound like Carbon13 is the perfect intersection for the scale and the social impact for you.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. And then Joseph, would you like to share?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well said by Zoe, and I agree. Carbon13 is a fantastic place in terms of the scale and the social impact. For me, impact is the root of everything I'm doing here right now. Like, I just see climate as an emergency and want to have a large impact. So when I saw the opportunity with Carbon13 and the emphasis that they really put on the fact that they really want to see scalable ventures, they want to see impact, really attracted me to that. For me, to kind of on a personal level, why I'm prompted to start my own venture rather than joining a pre-existing startup is around an excitement about the ability to build something new and an opportunity to, I think startups, in addition to having a large amount of impact, also allow you a unique opportunity to change paradigms and cultures about how people approach work, how work is structured, how organizations are structured. And I think that while the climate crisis is first and foremost an emergency, it's also a unique opportunity to reshape the world in hopefully positive ways as we go through this like massive transformation in our society. And I think I like the opportunity to rethink how to structure an organization. When you go into an existing organization and you say, hey, what if we did things differently? Sure, you can win that fight sometimes. I'm not going to claim you can't, but it's a very different dynamic than when you're just building something from a blank slate. You really get to dream and envision and figure out what is the kind of company I would want to work for. What is the kind of company I want to build for other people to work, and the idea of creating that space and for other people to have careers, hopefully, if we are to succeed, obviously, because we're very early stage, that gives me a lot of energy. So that's why personally.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's like you have so much ownership for what you want to build in the ventures that you start, right? Yeah, thank you, Joseph, for sharing. Laura, would you want to share what prompted you to start your own venture?
Yes, thank you. I will actually agree with both Zoe and Joseph. I really like the aspect to have a big impact on climate change. And the reason of why I want to do my own startup versus joining already existing company in this space is really to be able to shape that culture. And for me, that also looks like from a scientific background, being able to more have that interdisciplinary work with technologists, commercial people. And I really didn't find that at many other startups that in this space. So that's really what excites me about it, to be able to shape the culture and have the diversity of backgrounds.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. So I think Chris's audio is fixed. So I'll pass it back to Chris to give us a brief intro about the Carbon13 program.
Chris, are you?
Chris?
I think he might be having some trouble again.
It looks like he dropped from the call.
Oh.
Technical issues, as always.
We can move to the next question, I guess, for the panel. We get more time with the panelists.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. Okay, so moving on to the next question that I have, also related to Carbon13, is now that you shared a bit more about what prompted you to start your own venture, can you share with us, like, throughout your time at Carbon13, what has been Carbon13's most valuable contribution in guiding this entrepreneurial journey?
I mean, for me, 100%, it's just meeting the amazing people here. And I'm not just saying it because you guys are here. I mean,
I was afraid if I didn't go first, so I was going to take the answer, because that's the clear answer for me as well. I'll just say several of them are in this room. It's the people, the amount of connections that they've introduced us to in terms of our fellow cohort members, as well as the advisors, the mentors, the experts. It's unlike any opportunity I think I've ever really seen in my life.
Yeah. How many people are there in the cohort?
so there are 70 of us, and it's like about half of them are technical and half of them are commercial. So this is kind of like, it's like, yeah, so it's a bit like Love Island, right? And then you come together and you like meet and you have like 6 weeks of the first phase where you're kind of like really nerding out on these sustainability topics, like no jokes, right? Because I think everyone is there for a reason. If you ask Joey or if you ask Laura versus like me, like the different things that we, even we talk about the same topic, the different perspectives we have are completely different, and it really is like you don't know what you don't know. And it's even when I was co-founding Sorcery, I was really looking for a co-founder for a long time. I went through a load of recruitment things, putting up ads, all that kind of stuff. But actually, especially if you're looking for a partner who's not just going to do stuff, but is actually going to be a thought partner, like true partnership, it's actually very difficult to find someone who shares the same mission, has like complementary skill sets, and actually is the right time in their lives where they can actually, take a chance and do this. I think that's actually quite rare. And no jokes, like in the first time I met with everyone, like that, because we had like 3 days of residential where we're all in the same kind of city and we had like workshops and stuff. And obviously after the workshops end at 6 p.m, you can go home, but like you end up in the pub, and by I think like day 3, I'd completely lost my voice and I was just living on lockets. And I know like it's all my fault because I was just so excited to talk to everyone and just like get to know everyone.
Yeah, it's like hard to find the right fit, right? Especially for a co-founder.
Yeah, it's difficult to run right fit. And also I just wanted to echo what Zoe was saying. I remember that feeling so well of being at the pub with these folks, talking and feeling exhausted and being like, I should go home and sleep. But how many times in my life am I going to be in a room with 20 people that are all this excited to nerd out about entrepreneurial ideas on climate? And I can sleep at other times. And I just felt this drive to be in that room with people. And it's just so unique. Sorry, Laura, I feel like I cut you off there. So go ahead.
No, that's all right. I just want to say, so we're in cohort 3 and we just finished phase 1, which is literally like 70 people from technical backgrounds, commercial backgrounds, all in the same room, all, like Zoe said, all here for one purpose, help climate change, and to do it by startup. So it really creates a unique atmosphere. And we formed teams 2 weeks ago now. But I feel like it really is a community for whole of cohort 3, and we're all there to support each other in each ventures that's hopefully going to be really great out of this program.
Awesome. Yeah, it's like
sense of community is real.
Yeah, community. Yeah. Do people typically quit their full-time jobs to join this program?
I can't vouch on what's typical, but I did. I know there was a mix in the cohort. Some people did, some people did not.
But it's still manageable with a full-time job.
I think
I know that there are some in-person events, right?
Yeah, I think it's certainly manageable. I think it would be really challenging, depending on the type of your work. For me, I was working for a US-based company. The in-person dates were in the UK, so that would have been extremely challenging with the time zones. I think Carbon13 does their best to be accommodating in some ways. There's several in-day sessions, and then the rest are virtual, and all the virtual are recorded, so you do have the option of kind of doing those asynchronously. That being said, if you have the ability, and obviously not everyone does have the financial situation, the privilege to be able to do that, but if you can, I think being able to be there for it was worth it. I don't regret quitting my job. My former employer's watching. Sorry, I liked you guys, but it was worth it. But I believe some people in the cohort did it, and they did go on to phase 2. So it's certainly possible.
Okay, yeah.
I think
Good
it's
to know.
it's difficult, right? Because even when we weren't in person, a lot of our workshops were like 9:30 in the morning till like 4 p.m., which is quite intense. And outside of that, like especially in the first phase, it was so much like trying to talk to everyone and actually trying to like, I think there's like an emotional curve, right, where you kind of like, yay, so many exciting people. Oh no, I need to find someone to team with. Oh, maybe that person, maybe that person. You want to get to know everyone, but you only have so much time. And so like just trying to organize all these side conversations with everyone, and also trying to figure out like what you want to work on, because a lot of people have like multiple skill sets. So I'm one of those like generalist people, right? So I was looking, oh, do I want to work on like food systems and supply chain? Do I want to work on this biotech thing? Do I want to work on like, you know, buildings? Because I've done a lot of like kind of energy work in buildings as well, and EVs. So I think like it's this like mad energy. So I think like, so I know that there are, you know, people who have managed to keep on full-time jobs on this, but definitely like they've been the masters of time management. But also like talking to them, I was like, how do you manage? And they're like, honestly, like I'm sometimes on 2 Zoom meetings on like 2 screens, and then just mute one of them based on, you know, what I can get away with and stuff. It's pretty nuts. But I think like from phase 2, because then you're part of a team, right? So it's really around managing your relationship with your team. And as long as like, you know, it's like with every team, as long as everyone's expectations are met, I think it's a bit more manageable, I'd say.
Yeah.
To what extent sorry, I have a question. To what extent do you like apply with an idea versus just kind of going with some background experience and find your people and then come up with the idea there?
Yeah.
Or is there a balance?
I believe you are welcome to apply with an idea, but it is not a requirement whatsoever. That was really exciting for me. That was a big part of why I applied. I was very much, I want to help with this thing, and I'm completely free from ideas. So I believe the application process is, yeah, you certainly don't need one, and I don't think it changes your likelihood of getting in at all, but you are welcome to come with one. I will say as a, I guess, not from the program's point of view, but as from someone in the program's point of view, I think if you do come in with an idea, my personal advice from my perspective would be to potentially come in open-minded that might not be what you work on. I will say that that's kind of how Zoe came in. And one of my first interactions with Zoe was Zoe coming in and saying, I have this idea, but I'm totally willing to work on something else if I think it's a better fit. And that to me was like, ooh, this is a person I want to work with, because they're adaptable, they're open-minded, they're not locked into this idea. And that immediately was like a very attractive quality to co-founder. We didn't end up teaming together, but that was like very early on. I was like, there were several people in the cohort who came in like that, who I have an idea, but I'm willing to move away from it if I need to. And I think that's a good quality to have.
Yeah, I mean, I really remember those chats, and I mean, as someone who's come in with idea, and I already had like 2 inbound VC inquiries, and like, you know, had seen some traction, like got some customer base and stuff, and yeah, and I guess like, you know, but I would say that like even when I was interviewing, I kept emphasizing to the Carbon13 team that yes, I have this thing, but actually my background's kind of diverse, and for me it's about the impact. So, you know, if I see something that's a big opportunity, then I'll go for it. I think there are people who have come in with like, you know, because there are some technical founders who've worked very hard at like a specific technology, and then they're like, okay, I need to find someone to help me commercialize this, right? Then I think that's quite different. But then I guess like in some ways I would say that's harder, because that means you need to find someone who is really excited about what you've already built, because there's less flexibility. But obviously the good thing is if you do find that person, then you're already way ahead. So it's kind of swings and balances.
Yeah, thank you, Anna, for the question. I think this is a perfect segue to the next question I had, which is, would our panelists be able to share with us like what ideas you're actually planning to pursue in your program? Maybe we can start with Laura and then Zoe and Joseph.
Yeah, so like I said, we just teamed up like a few weeks ago, and I was not one of those teams that already came with an idea before joining Carbon13. So yeah, we're looking basically the problem that we're focusing on is that the production of like sustainable world essentials. We have a huge negative impact on our planet by, like, for instance, producing fuel, dairies, oils. And I think that precision fermentation has a huge opportunity to reverse this impact. One of the things we're mostly looking into right now is the production of oil. So palm oil is in 50% of most of the things you find in the supermarket, and also contributes to a lot of deforestation and endangered species, including the sun bear. So we named our company Sun Bear Bioworks, and we're looking at production of oil in using precision fermentation. And we recently made a website, so sunbearbioworks.com if you want to learn more about it and stay in touch.
Cool. So essentially like creating a different alternative to the palm oil to substitute that out.
Yeah, so by making it in a bioreactor, like same way as beer is produced, for instance, you don't need as much land, and you definitely don't need to get rid of rainforests to make those monocultures of palm oil. That's the idea for carbon impact.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I think that would be super impactful.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like what we're building is actually very much linked to what the Sun Bear Bioworks team is working on as well. So we're actually developing, so basically, you know, as Laura said, precision fermentation is really key to unlocking a lot of decarbonization. So obviously there's like issues like with palm oil, but also say, for example, with dairy. There's actually, so lab grown dairy has 97% less carbon footprint than actually using a cow. And there's also like similar stats in terms of like water use and land use and things like that. And so, but a big issue that a lot of precision fermentation companies have is that, you know, they've really worked this out in the lab scale, but actually they struggle to scale into production level, because obviously when you're, say, even imagine when you're cooking, right? Cooking for one person versus cooking for like 500 people is completely different in terms of pots and how you make that work. And that isn't a biology problem, that's an engineering problem. So that's why I've teamed up with Akshay, who is our engineering kind of like lead, and Ollie, who is a software developer / data scientist, who both have experience in the biotech space to work on this. To enable companies like Sun Bear to scale. We don't have a name yet, but watch this space. We will be getting there.
Awesome. Thank you, Zoe, for sharing. Joseph, what about you?
Yeah, choosing names is really hard. We don't have a name either. It's very difficult. Yeah, I just want to give the quick disclaimer up the top that, you know, I think as both of them mentioned, we're very early. These teams have been formed for about 2 weeks. So we're really trying to come to this from the point of view of we're trying to figure out what we should build, right? We understand the problem space we want to work in, but I'm more describing a problem space than a product yet, because that's what we're working on right now. Is we're on, you know, phone calls every day, talking to customers and trying to figure out where the real pain points are and what we should build. But that being said, my team is interested in the residential energy and decarbonization space. So, I mean, our kind of problem statement as we see it is that there are millions of homes that have high carbon footprints. It's a huge amount of the carbon base, and there's a lot of homes that need energy efficiency interventions to reduce energy costs, carbon footprint. So we're looking at anything from installations to converting to electric heat pumps to smart thermostats, you know, even changing to LED light bulbs, anything that we can do in a home. We're really very keen on the insulation and heat pump side of things, but again, we're gonna follow where the interviews bring us. So yeah, we want to figure out how we can use technology and some key insights to streamline that process and accelerate that process of adoption. And there are all kinds of targets, whether you look in the US, you look at the UK, about how many homes we want to electrify and improve installation standards on. And everyone agrees we should do it. And there's not a lot of agreement on how we're going to get there. So we're looking at how to streamline that. And this could be anything from looking at your home and figuring out which changes you should make, to automating the process of actually doing that, connecting you with installers. We're also very interested in figuring out the financing side of things, to figure out how do you deal with the upfront costs, because a lot of these things, yeah, they save you money, but they're very long payback periods. Also, my team as a whole, but specifically me, recently, I'm very interested in what the literature refers to as the tenant-landlord dilemma, is how do you get a the landlord of a property to be interested in doing energy efficiency improvements when the tenants are the ones paying the bills. I don't know the answer yet, but I would love to figure out a solution to that. That would be awesome if we could figure that out. And I don't know if this is stretching the bounds, but on that note, anyone works in real estate, any landlords, any realtors, anyone that works in that space, that would be interesting talking to us. We're, like I said, spending all of our day doing customer discovery right now. So I couldn't help but get the plug in there. I promised my team I would. So if you know anyone in that space, buy to let lenders, landlords, property managers, property developers, that would be interested in chatting for like 15 minutes, that'd be really helpful.
Yep. Anyone interested, be sure to reach out to Joseph. So we also have Utkarsh, who is also in the program. So Utkarsh, do you want to also share like what ideas you're planning to pursue?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, normally I'm the Work on Climate events host, but I'm also in the Carbon13 Cohort 3 with, Joseph, Laura, and Zoe. And since Chris is having some technical difficulties, I'll fill in as the fourth member of the panel until he can rejoin. So I'm also more in the exploratory boat. I didn't come in with a venture into this program. Currently, me and two others are looking at the agriculture space. So as many of you might be aware, due to intensive commercial farming practices, monoculture, soil health, and more specifically, soil biodiversity has been very adversely impacted. And so agriculture is really responsible for a vast amount of emissions. And we're also seeing that the amount of natural protections that crops have is starting to go down, and they're becoming very susceptible to disease or pests. And it's difficult to see how our soil as a planet will be able to fulfill the growing demands that are placed on it, by a population that's going to hit 10 billion by 2050. And so the problem that we're really trying to investigate is that currently there is no portable and cheap way to measure microorganisms in the soil. And soil biodiversity is connected to soil health, crop health, and soil productivity. And so the company that we're trying to build is called Elaniti, elaniti.com. And we're trying to build a novel, portable, and field deployable device that essentially uses physics, microbiology, and then a bit of machine learning on top of the data that it will collect to measure soil biodiversity. And what we're hoping this will do is help us measure the granular impact of different types of farming practices on soil biodiversity, which then we can use to also predict the impact on soil health and finally soil productivity, or the yields that the field actually produces.
Thank you for sharing. It sounds like everyone is working on so many different aspects. I think that's what makes the program super exciting too. Stepping away from like what you are currently working on, I think this is a more general question for people who may be interested in applying to Carbon13. So as the climate space is relatively new and people are in different stages of learning and have different levels of experience, how should people actually evaluate if they are ready to apply for the Carbon13 program?
This is the one I was most excited to answer. And it's great because I was nervous that Chris wouldn't like my answer, but now he's not here. Just do it. Don't worry about it. You're ready. Just go. Just apply. What do you have to lose? Maybe Chris won't like it because he's gonna have more applications to go through. But seriously, just do it.
Yeah.
The application takes like 3 or 4 hours. You can find the time. I throw your hat in the ring. I applied and said this will never happen, but I'll throw my hat in the ring, and here I am. So
Yeah.
Laura. And to add to that, I think if you're passionate about this space and you want to spend the next few years working in this area, just apply. Like most of the cohorts, they've never worked on climate change before, so you really don't need a lot of expertise to join this cohort in, and you learn a lot of transferable skills. So I would say recommend, if you work on your application, focus on the transferable skills that you've learned in your career so far, and see how you can apply them to the climate industry. Because we need a lot of different skills and expertise in this space to help the climate, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Joseph just said, because for sure, I think like, when we look at climate change, there's so many different problems, and there's systemic problems that require lots of different skill sets together. And I would also say, like, I think the main thing is really thinking for yourself, is this what you really want to do, and like how you would want to, like what is the space that you really care about, and then really try and make sure that you reflect. Because for me, my CV is kind of jumbled up, right? It's all over the place. So for me, it was very much looking at, okay, what are the specific skills or like transferable kind of bits of experience? And what are because they care a lot about network and contacts, right? So say, I don't know, let's take a very different space, say like you talk about finance, or you talk about, I don't know, like buildings or consumer goods, like all of them have a climate impact. So try and like find your angle and then like sell it to the Carbon13 team. It's fine.
Yeah, it's like even though you think you may not be ready, but you're interested in the climate space, maybe this is something you should just apply for and just see where it lands you. What advice do you have for aspiring climate entrepreneurs? Yeah, any advice, like, or any like common mistakes you think people should try to avoid?
I'll jump on it. Zoe, you want to go? All right, mine is don't build too quickly. Don't assume you know what you need to build. Go talk to customers, talk to experts, read the literature, read some more, question your assumptions. I think a lot of folks just say they get a seed of an idea and they immediately say, okay, what are we building? How are we building it? And building the right thing is the important thing. It's a cliche at this point, I know, but it's true.
Yeah, it's like you want to find that good like product market fit first, validate it before just jumping straight into it.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, talk to people. Don't assume you know what people are buying. Don't fall into the build it and they will come trap. Really make sure you're building something people actually want. Validate the pain points.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I think adding to what Joey said, and by the way, you just took the words right out of my mouth, just for the record. But like, actually, it's also it's almost like product market mission fit. So actually figuring out like who are the stakeholders, because climate change, like most social issues, is actually a very complex issue. So actually understanding, say, who is in your ecosystem. So yes, absolutely understand your customer, but also all the different people you could affect. And then, because also climate change isn't just a like technical environmental earth issue, right? Like I think it annoys me when people just say, oh, the planet is our client, but actually there's like but actually like say inequalities in the world, like whether it that actually plays very much into the space too. And so actually understanding when you design your business and your product or service, it's really understanding like who you actually affect and how you do that before you actually create that. And actually you can also test those assumptions, like what is the impact you can actually have, both from like a carbon accounting point of view, but also like who are the stakeholders you can affect in this point of view, which I feel like Utkarsh is probably even better, a better person to talk to about for that.
Yeah. Laura, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Zoe and Joseph also said what I had in mind.
Cool, thank you. So
I can add something to that. So this was about just advice for climate applicants, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Or
I would
just
say entrepreneurial. Yeah, for entrepreneurs, I think I echo a lot of what Joseph said. I would say like part of it is just attempting to do it itself, right? Like you actually need to start committing to solving something, because the speed at which I've seen ideas within this program evolving across the different teams, I mean, is pretty rapid, right? So you have to make some working assumptions to try and like make progress, but you always keep encountering new information that will change the context that you have, and it's going to change your outlook on what you think is valuable to build. So you have to be adaptable. I'm not a successful entrepreneur yet, right? I'm an aspiring entrepreneur. And so I think Chris would probably be able to answer this question a lot better. But ask me again in 20 years and I will tell you.
5 years, Utkarsh.
Hi,
8
Chris.
years, 8 years. Hi, Yishan.
It's good to see you.
It's good to be here. I apologize that I've been suffering some technical difficulties. I'm now
No
in
worries.
beautiful Lincoln's Inn Fields outdoors. Hopefully you
Yeah.
can't hear too many. There's some crows and planes going by overhead, but hopefully it's not too disruptive.
No, it looks super beautiful in your background. I think we've been getting a lot of questions from our audience about more of the logistics, about the programs. So I think it would be great if you can go through your presentation and share with us more about the Carbon13 program.
Sure, okay. Well, given the time constraints, I'm going to keep it hopefully reasonably concise so we can have a chance for questions. So Carbon13 is recruiting right now for its 4th cohort. What I've heard this evening from members of the 3rd cohort is music to my ears, because obviously it's a process that the cohort goes through together to incubate these startup ideas, get them out into the real world, get first customers, get our pre-seed investment, and so on. We started I'm a professor at the business school at the University of Cambridge, and I and a couple of my students started whiteboarding the idea for Carbon13 back 3 years ago. Once we had the basic idea, which I'll tell you about in a minute, we went and looked for a team. I was very pleased to be able to recruit Dr. Nikki D from the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, and Michael Langwith, who was one of my students at University College London 13 years ago, but then when he finished that program, he became a successful entrepreneur. Eventually Jonathan Cumming, who is an experienced CFO in very significant companies, and is the final member of our senior team. And I'm emphasizing the team because that's what Carbon13 is all about, is bringing together cohorts of technical and commercial people and getting them to form into dream teams, right? And part of the secret of Carbon13 and the success that we've had so far as a venture builder is that teams that have that complementarity of skills, complementarity of perspectives, mindsets, backgrounds, make far faster progress, far fewer false starts than teams where you've got 2 engineers or 2 sort of humanities graduates who are focused on social impact and so on, right? As I say, 3rd cohort at the moment, so we've had 193 founders in total go through our program. Average age is 37, but we do have people, as you've seen this evening, of many different age groups, and different backgrounds and perspectives. We've made 20 investments so far in climate ventures. We invest £80,000 net at about the halfway point of our program. And I'm really delighted to say that of those 20, 10 have already raised more money after our investment, and all but one of the 20 teams is making good progress. One of the teams, the 20th team, one of the co-founders was Ukrainian, and so her life was kind of disrupted by obviously the war, and that's so that's made it difficult for that team. We'll be making another 14 investments this coming in late July this year, and I'm really delighted by what I've seen from Cohort 3 so far in terms of the range of ideas that are coming out. We've got about half software and half sort of, let's call it hard tech, deep tech, whatever you want to call it, where there is some kind of capital expenditure involved in the business. In terms of the structure of the program, it's a 7.5-month program, and it starts with a 6-week period we call phase 1, where you're teaming up and working on ideas. And if you team up, then you go through to the second phase of the program. And in the current cohort, I think 68 people started the program, 51 people went through to the next round, went through to the second phase of the program. Those people, 56 people. Those 56 people are in 21 teams, and as I say, we're expecting to invest in 14 of those teams in a couple of months' time, or actually just over a month. Those teams will then, and so right now in phase 2 of the program, the teams are working on customer discovery, working to validate the assumptions that that surround their venture. A lot of the investment decision that we're making is around the strength of the team, right? That's really, and that's not just something that is a paper exercise. One of the delightful things about our program is we work closely with the teams, and so we get a chance to get to know you, right? Get to sort of feel that we have an understanding of the decision-making quality of the teams and the skills of the teams and so on. Once we make the investment, then the third phase of our program is a bit like a startup accelerator. We've invested, we've taken somewhere between 5% and 12.5% of the venture. How much in terms of the equity stake that we take depends on how rapidly the venture goes on to raise more money. If you raise more money at a, say, £4 million valuation in less than 6 months after we invest, then Carbon13 is ending up taking 5% of your equity. If you are raising more slowly, you don't raise within 6 months of our initial investment, then we end up taking 12.5%. And there is a bit of a sliding scale there, depending on the valuation that you achieve. During phase 3 of the program, the accelerator phase of the program, we're introducing the teams to investors. That's partly, obviously, in some cases that might lead in a very linear fashion to an investment. In other cases, it's really practice time, right? It's getting to know how to talk to investors, giving exposure, and so on, right? So we've got some interesting, and then there's a number of other types of support that we give during phase 3 that are both about helping the teams with their commercial progress and also their carbon impact, really sort of refining the carbon impact. And then the program, after 7.5 months, ends with a showcase day, and we have that's in person, by the way. I see there's been some comments in the chat and about this, but in phase 1, there are a total of 9 in-person days required. In phase 3, the showcase days, if we've invested, are mandatory in person. Everything else can be done virtually. Now, some people, will find ways to congregate in London or in Cambridge. It's not meant to be an isolating process. We're just trying to accommodate the fact that people have very complex working patterns these days, and make it possible for people to participate, in a variety of different ways. I think all I'll say other than that is we're sector agnostic. I would say about half of people show up with an idea, and half are looking for somebody else who has an idea. I don't know if that accords with my colleague, the cohort 3 members here, your experience, but I guess that's roughly what I think is the case. Our call to you as the talent is, the climate is an emergency right now. It's the most important challenge facing humanity. One of the ways that you can scale up your impact as a human being, far beyond what you can do by persuading your friends to go vegan, is to figure out an innovation that can make a difference to the climate crisis. And so Carbon13 is a community that's designed to help you do that. And if you're going to spend, there's lots of opportunities in climate tech right now, but if you're going to spend the next 10 years of your life working on an innovation like this, then Carbon13 exists to help you work out from first principles, what's the value proposition, what's the business model, what's the go-to-market, what's the scalability, and what's the team and how should the team work together, and what's the carbon impact, right? So, there's a lot of froth in the market. There's a lot of greenwashing. Carbon-13 is partly an antidote to greenwashing. Sorry, I must have said Siri somewhere in there, because Siri suddenly popped up. Okay. Carbon-13 is about helping you work out, firstly, work out some, an innovation that really could make a difference. And secondly, arm you with the carbon intelligence to be able to make good business decisions based on carbon. I'll give you an example. In our second cohort, one of the companies we invested in is Merrwijk Biotech, and they are working on microalgae, right? And microalgae is some fascinating potential in terms of decarbonization. And when they first sort of worked up their idea, and when they pitched us for their investment, they had three products in mind. They were going to do spirulina, they were going to do vegan omega-3 fish oil, right? But vegan. And they in the medium term, they had their eyes on a phytohormone that can be produced using microalgae that could potentially replace nitrogen fertilizer. Now, of those three, replacing nitrogen fertilizer is by far the most decarbonizing path, right? And so it's been fascinating to work with them over the course of the final phase of our program, and they've gradually pivoted more and more in the direction of the most decarbonizing path. And that's partly because of input they've had from us, but also from the investors who are saying, yes, we're actually more concerned about your decarbonizing impact than we are about how swift and certain your road to market is. So I hope that gives you a flavor of the kind of thing that we're doing. Our call to you, as I said, is come and work on something that is really high potential, has the chance to take 10 million tons CO2 equivalent emissions out of the emission space. All right, I'm going to try to shut up and answer questions now. I hope that's been informative. I really want to thank all the Cohort 3 members who have joined this evening for sharing the time and sharing the lessons learned so far. Still plenty of lessons to learn that they've experienced through the program. And I'll finally close by saying, I really admire entrepreneurs because you're basically taking your life and saying, okay, I'm going to really try to do something big with it. And I think that's fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back through the questions, but maybe people want to type new questions in the chat as well.
Yeah, and thank you, Chris, also for setting up this great program, creating this space so that people can actually come and work on these amazing climate ideas.
I've been teaching entrepreneurship for a long time, and I realized a few years ago that I was going to spend the rest of my life on climate change. And I think literally everybody on the planet should be saying, okay, I'm going to drop everything else I'm working on and work on climate, right? Because otherwise we're all dead, if that's not too flippant. And so I know how to run entrepreneurship programs, so that's my contribution. Right?
Yeah, it's a big contribution. Yeah.
So far, so good.
Yeah, we have a few questions from the audience. So Vali asked the question, would this be for building products only, or would they also be for services as well?
It's definitely both. Thank you, it's a great question. It just, the key thing is it needs to be scalable, right? It needs to be something that either, dozens of major emitting corporations will use, or millions of individuals will use, right? It's got to, it needs to, a lot of the energy in this space is in corporates at the moment, by the way. So a lot of the activity that we're seeing, I mean, we like consumer-facing ideas, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the activity that we're seeing is in enterprise-facing, business-facing ideas, because if we can get businesses to eliminate the emissions, then obviously that makes it a lot easier for ordinary people.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really curious myself, like in the past 2 years that Carbon13 has been active, for you, like what have you seen change the most in people's ideas, approach, as well as understanding of climate solutions?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in cohort 1, which started in March last year and finished in November last year, we saw a lot of people who I would say nowadays would go to on deck,
Mhm.
right? So I'm sure most people, if not everybody in the room, is familiar with on deck. It's a great program. Or what I hear, I mean, I don't know the program that well, but from what I hear, it's a good program. And I think of on deck as a place that you can learn about climate innovation, right? And we didn't set Carbon13 up as a teaching program. I mean, there's a little bit of teaching on the program. People sometimes get the wrong idea because they say, well, Chris is a professor, so therefore he's going to teach. And I sometimes, you know, as you can hear tonight, I do like to talk, and sometimes I do get my chance to give a lecture or whatever, but it's not really a teaching program, it's a doing program. And so that's one thing that's changed, is that we've got people who, you know, there's still plenty of people who join who have only a beginner's understanding of the issues around carbon and the climate, but we have more people joining with a greater understanding now. I think one of the things that's made our lives so much easier as Carbon13 is we have some really interesting and inspiring examples from the previous cohorts now, and so that, you know, we can help when we say we want you to do something that's really ambitious, we want you to do something that's really potentially going to move the needle. It's a little bit easier to illustrate what we mean by that. Software ventures, non-software ventures, products, services, different kinds of customer bases, and so on. And of course, we're able, you know, we're asking our cohort to take a big leap of faith and say, trust us. If you form a dream team, the investment follows dream teams, and of course now it's easier to point to the teams that have gone before and say, yeah, look at those teams. They're, you know, everybody who joins Carbon13 is pretty talented, but you know, it's not, innovation is not reserved for supermen or superwomen, right? It's something that, you know, the true entrepreneurial mindset from my perspective, one aspect of it is, if I don't know how to do it, that's fine, because I'll find someone who does know how to do it, and I'll persuade them to help me, right? And so, you know, that kind of teaming thing has evolved over the time that we've been working. I suppose there hasn't been enough time for really there to be big changes in, you know, in the way that people look at things. I suppose we did have more greenwashing ideas pitched to us in the first cohort. And now people can see a little bit more like what we mean by not greenwashing. So that helps as well. Anyway, I'm going to shut up. Great question, Yishan. Thank you.
Yeah, it's like as the program is evolving, there's more examples of what previous cohorts have done, and that'll actually help the upcoming cohorts to have better ideas.
Let me just, I just noticed a question by Damien in the chat, and and Utkarsh has answered it, but I want to just add a little layer there, which is, so if part of a team is going to join the program, then it needs to include the CEO, right? One of the, if you're going to have 2 people or 3 people in a pre-existing team apply to the program, which is great, then one of those people has to be the CEO. I hope that's obvious, but just to mention it.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think in the last few minutes, let's close with the question for all of the panelists. So the question is, what can the broader climate community do for you? Thanks for the thumbs up. Maybe we can start with Joseph, Zoe, and then Laura.
Sure. I'll try to be quick because I think I already gave my plug. Definitely, if you know anyone who is a landlord, property manager, property developer, works in lending, specifically buy-to-let lending, would be very interested in talking to those folks if you have them. So I'm on the Work on Climate Slack. Please let me know. That's my ask.
Awesome, thank you.
From our side, I think there are a couple of things we're looking for. One is obviously if you know someone who works at a precision fermentation-based biotech startup, no matter what products they're working on, would love to go talk to them just to understand, you know, the space a bit better. We're also looking for a bioengineer, specifically, well, ideally in the position of fermentation, like kind of like a fermentation scientist, to join our team, ideally. And yeah, and I guess like we don't know what we don't know. So if you've already been exploring the space and you go, hey, this is something I've thought a lot about, and you haven't thought about, have you thought about this? Then just message me. So I think that would be amazing. I guess like in terms of what I could do for you guys as well, like I feel very passionate about, like, as you've probably figured from what I've said before, diversity, like in this space, like both in entrepreneurship but also in the sustainability space, because so far a lot of these spaces have been like I guess like very like it hasn't always been that diverse. So like if you're someone who's interested, just drop me a message on LinkedIn and I'll make time for you.
Thank you, Zoe, for offering that. Very generous of you. And Laura, anything you would like to add there?
Yeah, so we're currently doing lots of customer research. So if you know anyone, precision fermentation, Zoe, or in the food industry working with oils, please drop me a message. But more generally, I love to connect with all of you. And so I think this event was promoted on LinkedIn. So just add me on LinkedIn or go to our website, bioworks.com. Yeah, sunbeerbioworks.com. And yeah, I love to connect with both of you and talk more.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that as well. I failed to say that, but if you have any questions about the program, if you want to connect, just want to chat, please, please do.
Utkarsh, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I'll say the same. You know, I'm also an American like Joseph in the program. So if you have any questions around that, like how that works or what the best practices might be and so forth, feel free to reach out. I'm on the Work on Climate Slack. I'm pretty active on there. As far as the venture itself goes, we're called Lanity. So you can go to elaniti.com. What we really need at the moment and would be really helpful for us from the broader community is any conversations with soil microbiologists or soil ecologists, regenerative agriculture experts. So if you know anyone within that domain that you think might be interested in exploring this, please let me know. We would love to chat with them. And then of course, farmers, farming co-ops who are interested in measuring their soil or bettering their soil quality. I think that's probably the end game for our venture. That's really the impact that we want to create. And so, if you know any farmers, farming co-ops that are really looking to try and solve this problem, please reach out to me. That would be something that I would be very grateful for. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're at time. I just want to thank Dr. Coleridge, Laura, Zoe, Joseph, as well as Utkarsh for sharing your wonderful insights with us. I think the audience has been really benefited from this event. This event is recorded and we will post it on our Work on Climate YouTube channel. So be on the lookout for that. Just want to thank everyone for joining and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.